Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, as we continue to track the situation that is changing by the minute in college football and as it stands right this second. And as Joe and I talked about before we started to record here, we better get this video out there quick because things are changing rapidly. Of course, we know the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have shelved the seasons, as well as the MAC and the Mountain West. The other, 6 conferences in play, including the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12. Joe, how you doing today? This is Joe Hunk, has joined us a number of times to talk Auburn, Alabama football. Joe, how's it going today, man?
It's hot. It's Alabama in August is exactly what it is. And you have football players that have been on campus for the last couple of weeks. They've done their quarantine. They've signed up and registered for online classes. They've done all of that. And, Auburn started practice yesterday, as a matter of fact, but we don't know what they're practicing for or to. And that's just the thing, because, normally about this time, Mark, we would be going over, all right, you've got the schedule, the kickoff of this, Alcorn State was supposed to be who Auburn was opening up with. Then they were going to be heading to Atlanta to play North Carolina in the second week of the Chick-fil-A kickoff games. And those are no longer happening. And so now you have a season that was supposed to start at the end of August, beginning of September. And now you're talking about a season that's not even going to start at the moment until the end of September, which, let's look at our watches, because literally any moment you and I are talking, more news could be breaking. We could have breaking news right now as we're talking, with decisions that are happening, because you started to see the ball begin to kind of roll, unfortunately, down that negative part of the hill when you saw what happened with the Big Ten and the Pac-12. And those are our two major conferences that are making the decision. And with this virus and with everything that's going on, with what we're now starting to learn with the heart condition that comes with potentially recovering from COVID-19, this is something that truly is ever evolving. We haven't had SEC media days. We didn't have ACC media days. And Big 12, normally those happen around the same time as the MLB All-Star Week, because they kind of connect them, because there are no sports going on outside of a home run derby and an all-star game. And all of those have been canceled. They haven't even been made up. It wasn't something, as you know, and everything that you do with ESPN, normally you have SEC network coverage everywhere, the brand new ACC network coverage everywhere, and all of those, and everybody's scattered out to various places, and people are flying left and right to get to all of these different media days. Those have been canceled and haven't been made up. And it doesn't look like they're going to be made up at this point in time, because now we're just hoping that there's some sort of true college football that's going to be hitting the fields. And if it does, we may not even have fans at that. The Cincinnati Reds have talked about being the first Major League Baseball team to allow fans back into the stadiums, but we don't know how many of those fans are going to be. If you're there with your family and you have seat 1 through 4, does the person sitting beside you have to sit at seat 8 just so that they're separated enough? How is this going to work? There's way too many questions. And right now we don't have any answers, because it's ever evolving.
And in addition to the schedule at this point of the season, I'd be hitting you up typically, Joe, as you well know, to say, man, how's Bo Nix looking in practice? And
how great would it have been?
How's this offensive line shaking out? And, what are they going to do about replacing all those studs along the defensive line? And I'd be hitting you up with personnel questions, because that's what I want to know about. But man, let's just get the guys on the field, hopefully, depending on player safety and health, which is first and foremost.
Well, And one thing that you and I have talked about numerous times has been, these two great wide receivers that Auburn has, and Anthony Schwartz and Seth Williams. Both of those guys are juniors now. And, we've talked about this. Matter of fact, I believe I was sitting around this spot the last time you and I were talking about Anthony Schwartz and the fact that he is a track star and he is one of the best track athletes in the country. And there was a hope that he was wanting to go to the Olympics. Well, now that got pushed back. And now you start seeing some of this, this writing that is on the wall. And look, I'm speaking truly from a hypothetical situation that, again, let's just say, like, as you and I are talking and as we're trying to plan for a football season that may not happen, what happens if the SEC finally says, you know what, we're going to punt on the fall, all of these players that can remain on campus, that can continue taking virtual classes? Because as much as you and I talk about Auburn, Nick Saban made a very good statement the other day that's actually very smart, and a lot of people don't get is how much college football means to these athletes, these 100 to 120 kids that are on campus, that are living in dorms, that are living in apartments, that are there having and honestly are living a better life because they are a college football player than what they would be if they were going back home. And some of these players need to be at these campuses, even if they're in some sort of quarantine, because it is a much better life than what they're going back to. And it keeps them out of trouble. Majority of the time we see these what we call the arrest weekends. I mean, there are now Twitter feeds that are dedicated to the off-season arrest records and off-season arrests that happens with football players when they're allowed to go on spring breaks and go back home for a few weeks and all of that. These kids are it's better for them to be on campus, even if they're taking virtual classes and they're working out and all of that, and this is all going towards it. But if you are Seth Williams and you are considered one of the best wide receivers in the country and you have the opportunity to go to the NFL next year, what are you going to do if you get your grade around December, which is when these grades start being sent out, and your football season doesn't start until the middle of January or February? If we were to punt to the spring, do you still play your football season, or what do you do? What does the NFL now do with their combine? If these teams are playing in the spring, what does the draft do? Now it's all of these things that there's going to be a ripple down effect to this. But the other part of this is some of these athletes, Seth Williams being one of them, Anthony Schwartz, who could be getting ready for the Olympics next summer or next spring. What do they do? Because this is an Auburn offense that honestly is coming back and could be very, very good because of the experience that Bo Nix has. Bo Nix has been a fantastic leader for this Auburn football team off the field. And even the hashtag we want to play, he's been one of the most vocal players in the SEC when it does come to that, showing that leadership that you need to be the star quarterback at a university like Auburn. But if this thing goes to spring, how much of this is going to be true if Seth Williams says, look, guys, I have an opportunity to provide for my family, to provide for my future family and all of that. If I don't play in these next 10 games or whatever that we do have, I'm going to sit this out and just prepare for the NFL. You could see that not just at Auburn, but across the country, because there could be players that could be opting out of that. Justin Fields, even though he's a part of this we want to play movement, Trevor Lawrence, those players, if they're getting the grades that we all think that they're going to, and they're asked to, play in the spring, well, what are they going to do if the NFL is like, hold up, we're about to pay you $25 million. Just don't play and just start getting ready. This could be a total change in the college football season from everything, not just the news that could break by the time this video goes live on whatever channels we're throwing it onto, whether it's YouTube and everything else.
Joe, for me, the spring season doesn't make sense for a few reasons. One is what you're just outlining right here, is the prospects of going to the NFL for a lot of these guys. So let's look at the metrics of this. We're talking about roughly 250 to 260 players get drafted in the NFL draft.
Yep.
But as you well know, we're talking about tons of other guys that are on the draft boards for teams that have the hopes of getting drafted. Maybe they don't, but they have the hopes of getting drafted, and then they get picked up to be a free agent. So there's legitimately 400 to 500 players that have hopes of getting drafted. Okay. If you're going to start a football season the first week of February and the draft's the last week of April, in week 7 or 8 of the college football season, the new college football season, then yeah, what's the incentive of playing, especially if you're a high draft pick? If you're a guy that's on the borderline, maybe guys would start seasons with teams and then abandon them 5 or 6 weeks in just to get something on tape, play a good 5 games against quality opponents, then say, hey, I got to get ready for the combine. I got to get ready for my pro day. I want to get healthy and get ready and show them what I've got. And I've already done that. So, hey, I'm going to jump ship. I just think there's so many variables. And then, so there's the pro aspect of this, the NFL portion of it in possibly stripping, again, as many as 400 or 500 players away from FBS football. And then on top of that, just trying to work out the logistics of a season in the spring. And for a guy that was born and raised in Ohio, when you say spring starts in April. Spring doesn't start
Right.
in January when you live in Ohio, Minnesota, Wisconsin, up in that range. So a spring season is a spring in name only. It's not a spring in regards to weather.
It's basically 3 months of November football is what you're going to be getting if you were going to be playing it in the north.
I think it's even beyond that. Those are the coldest months of the year, January and February, if you live north of Tennessee or Kentucky. And so think about, follow me on this calendar layout. If we play the first week of February, let's say, we're playing, let's say 10 games. It's reduced to 10 games, 12 weeks.
Only.
We give them 2 byes, just like we're looking at, or the Big Ten and the Pac-12 we're looking at before they canceled. That's 3 full months. That's 12 weeks. They're going to play February, March, and April. So we're playing conference championship games the first week of May. And then even if we strip away all the bowl games and just play a college football playoff, that's going to take 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, spacing out the games. We're sitting on like May 20th.
Oh, yeah. And look, remember,
and then they've got to turn around and play in August.
Well, and that is why you see this, and this is something that people like to bash. As me in growing up, I played baseball all the way through college, and one of the biggest bashings that college baseball gets is how far into the year the College World Series is, and the fact that the MLB draft happens during majority of the time. It's during the College World Series, or at least during super regionals or regionals. And what takes place is you will have a player that would get a game-winning hit for his college, send them to Omaha, and then what they would do is they would go back and still be in the dugout and literally be watching MLB Network and watch themselves get drafted. And the very moment they get that last out, boom, they're gone now to a rookie league where they are trying to grow that way. And it takes them 2 and 3 years to get into Major League Baseball because they don't get the full aspect of spring training and all of that sort of stuff. That's why they get implemented into this rookie ball thing. If you're asking these college athletes now to be playing in February and March and April, and like what you've talked about as far as the weather conditions are concerned, you're also now asking them which one is more valuable to you, playing in your college football season where you obviously, let's be honest, the money in this is not in what happens, because you and I can watch and we can see as many football games as we absolutely want to, but how many times have we watched a football player grow from the very moment he plays his last snap in a bowl game that may be meaningless, or if their team is below 500 and they don't even make it to a bowl game, to becoming somebody that's a high draft pick because of the work that they've done at their pro days, at the combines, at the regional combines and all this other stuff. That's more beneficial to them as far as the long-term future, because even these players that, if they're smart with their money, they could make the money off of their first contract and set themselves up for life based on that. Why on earth do you want to risk playing college football when it's more beneficial for you to be working on your 40 time, to be working on your cone drills, to be working on all of this? And now you move that forward. These players are going to say, you know what, it's great and all, but I'm not going to do this because for me, it's more about providing for my family in the future. That's where this is going with. You've talked about the weather. I actually, again, have some friends up in Kansas City. I went up to the Big 12 tournament last year, basketball tournament, the Big 12 basketball tournament that's held in Kansas City. And I left here in Alabama where it was 70 and 80 degrees in March to go up to Kansas City, where I was needing to pull out all of my winter gear because it had just snowed 2 days prior to that. And that's the type of weather you're seeing on everywhere outside of the South. And not to mention, even if you do punt, the whole benefit of college football, as much as we love it and as you and I talk about it, the one thing that it has over the NFL is atmosphere. It is all about the atmosphere, the pageantry, the tradition, the atmosphere, the bands, all of this stuff that makes college football great. How much of that is actually going to be allowed in the stadium? Yes, we can watch a Major League Baseball game right now. We can watch the NHL and we can still kind of get into it because it's not about the crowds. The crowds add something to it. College football is all about the crowds. That's all it is about. It's about the tailgating. It is about, hint, hint, donor money that pay for those expensive seats so that the donors can also help pay these college football coaches' contracts. If they're not allowed into the stadium, how is this going to be working? How many donors are going to be like, no, I'm going to punt this year because my business isn't doing so well, and I'm going to need to save my money so that I can make sure that my business doors stay open? There's way too many problems with the majority of this. And Auburn is in this situation right now because we don't even know who Auburn's opening week opponent is anymore. Like the whole 2020 schedule, throw it out the window. It's gone. Now we're looking at a new one. I mean, my wife, no joke, when the schedule got sent out and we found out the new opponents for Auburn and the new opponents for Alabama, she went, well, Alabama's at the top of the schedule. That doesn't mean that Auburn's playing them first, right? And I was like, no. They just listed them alphabetically. That doesn't mean that's the first game of the football season. If we have one, what's going to happen? And that's what's bad about this is if you are a football team like Auburn, you have somebody like DJ Williams coming in that really grew through the season. You kind of wanted to see how he was going to grow now into this role that he now got because Boobie Whitlow is no longer a member of this team. You wanted to see Seth Williams have that big, huge final year that could possibly send him to Atlanta for the college football awards. And he could potentially become, win an award for the best wide receiver in the country. You wanted to see Anthony Schwartz and his growth. And that's just the offensive side of this. You have these players on the defensive side, and like KJ Britt and these linebackers that they're becoming some of these elite linebackers in the SEC. They may have to totally miss an entire year of football because of all of this. And what sucks about it is, as you and I are talking, everything is changing legitimately every single day. Something is changing, whether it's the testing, whether it is a player that could potentially be showing signs and symptoms of COVID-19, having to be quarantined and costing them 2 weeks of practicing, the windows that have now been allowed. I mean, look, it's normal for college football to start their fall practice right now. It's not normal that they didn't even have a spring. And you're seeing somebody like a Matthew Hill, who was a wide receiver at Auburn last year, wanted to use the spring practices to move over to the secondary position and learn that. This is his first time playing the secondary position yesterday. And so he still has to grow into that and learn all that before you get into what could be game week coming up in about a month and a half from now.
Got Joe Hunk on the line, joins us on a regular basis to break down Alabama, Auburn, the SEC, and the nation in college football. We always appreciate the conversation with Joe, and these are unprecedented times and trying to figure out where this is all headed. I believe that in looking at the Pac-12 and the Big Ten's decision, and certainly the Mountain West and the MAC are in a different category when it comes to financial gain and loss here. So to focus on the Big Ten, as you well know, from a financial standpoint, from a popularity standpoint, and a television rating standpoint, the SEC has one challenger, and that's the Big Ten. So the SEC and the Big Ten rule the sport financially. The last football season that I saw the reports on was actually the Big Ten per team made the highest revenue at like $55+ million. The SEC.
It's a nice paycheck, isn't it?
Not bad for Rutgers, who's in 9 consecutive games in the conference.
The SEC goes down to Dothan for spring meetings, and then they walk away with a nice little check that has a ton of zeros on it. And they're like, well, we can pay for a lot more stuff now. Let's go ahead and just start spending this and making the locker rooms look better.
So I don't want to say this was an easy decision for the MAC, let's say, but once those Power 5 opponents were taken away from the MAC, it became a lot easier. Consider Kent State's schedule. If you want to see a difficult non-conference schedule, go look at what the MAC and the Sun Belt play, because they're playing all the big boys in the non-conference. They play some ridiculously difficult schedules, and I point to Kent State as an example. Alabama, Kentucky, and Penn State was their non-conference schedule out of 4 games. Well, you take away that $1.5 to $1.8 million payout that they were getting per game, and you're taking away close to $6 million away per team. And that was most of what they were going to make this football season, in addition to gate and concessions, but that's pretty limited in the MAC. And then with all the protocols and the safety guidelines and the testing, the cost of the testing is just astronomical that a conference like the MAC would have to take on. So I don't want to say it benefits them to cancel, but it's an easier decision. But once you're talking about the Pac-12 and the Big Ten pulling the plug on a season, I have to think, Joe, that the litigation factor had to be the deciding factor for them.
Look, it's an old song, but P. Diddy had it right. It's all about the Benjamins. That's all. It's all about the Benjamins. And the way that this is, and I think the biggest fear factor that we need to talk about with this, as much as you and I want college football and we want that first Saturday where you have 25 games happening at one time and you're just sitting back, flipping back and forth, 6 TVs going and doing everything that you're doing. As much as we want this, we also have to realize that there is a health side to this. There's a health issue with this, and there is a potential that something catastrophic can happen on a live football game and during a live football game. There are things that are happening with this heart condition that a lot of us are just now learning about. And look, as people are saying is, and you'll hear this, look, I will tell you right now, and I, again, wherever you're watching this, however you're watching this, look down at your watch. Whatever time it is, in 2 minutes, this could totally change, because the Big Ten has even spoken about, the Pac-12 has spoken about, they have spoken with doctors, and these doctors have now told them, look, this is what can happen. This is what this heart condition is. And these people in the Big Ten and Pac-12 says, look, this is eye-opening. This is stuff that we didn't even consider. And I think it was the Big Ten that even looked around and said, look, you could see the look on everybody's eyes of, oh, crap. And I say it in that way because if you are a university, if you are a college, if you are a football team, you do not want something catastrophic to happen to a football player on a football field during a live football game that you will be looked at in a horrific way for the rest of time. And that is what this is truly about, because as much as it is also about these football players' lives and about the effects that people can have from COVID-19 and from the coronavirus as it is getting out of your system, we don't know what the next 1 and 2 and 3 years can mean health-wise for these people. If you were to risk it and to go about this, you're talking about the potential of something catastrophic happening to the life of a football player. You're talking about lawsuits. You're talking about your university losing millions and millions of dollars from donor money being lost, from the lawsuits that are coming out from all sorts of different people and all these different angles. Your university could be totally in so much trouble if you go about this the wrong way. And I think that is the reason why you are hearing the SEC say, look, as of right now, absolutely, we're still going about this schedule the way that we want to. We are making plans for it. But literally, just like that, every bit of this could totally change with one person's eyes and one person's mind being changed by something that they've just learned. Because look, we don't have a vaccine for this. We do not know what the long-term effects of this is going to be. We know none of that. Okay. Yes, we have Major League Baseball is going on. Yes, the NFL is getting ready to go. And we've seen players that are playing in the NBA that are being tested every single day. But the other issue with this is, and the whole difference of this is the reason why the NHL and NBA are looking so smart is because they have created that bubble life where nobody gets out. And if somebody does get out, oh, they just get ripped to shreds. But you've also seen that the NHL is having no positive tests with it, even though they're having so many tests every single day with this. Major League Baseball is just getting ripped apart because you have allegedly the Cardinals going out to casinos. You have the Marlins apparently going to places that they shouldn't be going to. All of this, there's a responsibility aspect of this. Now, that is where you have to look at this and be very, very smart about this, because we don't know what's going to change in the course of the next 2 or 3 days with this. I would love to watch this. And look, trust me, this is the college football season I've wanted for my entire life. Power fives versus power fives, good football. Yes, you may get an Alabama, Kentucky, or you may get some, POS game that nobody cares about, but it's at least power five versus power five, good football going against each other, legitimate football for 10 football games. This is what I've died for. Like every year I want, let's just have power fives versus power fives. Heck, if you're going to have a 10-game schedule, give me 2 more games and let them schedule between the other 2 Power 5 conferences are still playing, and let's have some big marquee matchups. I want that. I just want it safely. And I just want these players to be able to play all 10 football games or all 12 football games or 14 if you're talking about the college football playoffs, and not have any long-term effects. And that's the biggest fear that a lot of us have with this.
So I'm understanding the long-term effects, and we're not going to know that, but we're not going to know that necessarily next spring or even next fall what the long-term effects are. So I don't know why we can magically play football next spring or next fall when we're not going to know the long-term effects, and the research is going to have to be down the road. The other thing is, don't these football teams at this level already create somewhat of a bubble? And can't that bubble be even magnified or more restricted, considering, and this is what I keep hearing with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten canceling the other day, and hearing their commissioners, is them talking about, when asked, why is the Big 12 still in play, and the ACC and the SEC, and them, and I understand the position that they're in, that they're going to deflect and basically say, not be critical, but say they have their own data, they have their own situation, and every region of the country is different. This is why this doesn't fly with me, Joe. We've got a couple outliers during this pandemic, and those would be basically New York City has been hit hard from the get-go, and the outliers on the other end are the Montanas and the Wyomings with wide open spaces where hardly anybody gets it because of obvious reasons. So you got two extremes. But other than that, the hot spots have popped up all over the place, and then they've gone down. I live in an area where early on, based on the proximity to New York and New Jersey, was a hotspot, was having horrible numbers. But now it's a place where there's restrictions from 35 other states because it's going well here. Mm-hmm. And Texas was going great. Now it's not so much, all over the place. So we don't know where the hotspots are going to be. And it's pretty much shown that over time, they jump up all over the place. That leads me to this point. We could make a zillion comparisons between LA and Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in regards to the huge differences between the two, where USC
city, pretty much the same city.
Yeah, they're completely different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But in this case, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference whether you're in Provo, Utah, or Columbus, Ohio, or Clemson, South Carolina. Once those players are on campus, they're either on an indoor practice field or an outdoor practice field. They're at the cafeteria with the rest of their teammates eating. They're in a film room. They're at a study hall or taking online classes. They're at a game room type situation, arcade, playing ping pong, bowling, doing whatever, or they're in their housing, which is with their teammates. They are in a closed environment. So I make the argument, and I don't think it's ironclad, I think it's debatable, that they're safer playing football than just being out there.
I think the biggest question is, and I think that goes back to what we've talked about with Major League Baseball, is the fact that, yes, they are in an area, I should say, that is basically quarantined off from everybody else, but they're also not told, look, you cannot go outside. One of the biggest little chain restaurants that we have in the Auburn area is a place called Mama Goldberg's. We call it Mama G's. Has amazing Dorito and cheese. Oh, they're fantastic. But they're not told, hey, look, you can't go there. You know, at least with the NBA and the NHL, they're quarantined off to certain hotels, and they're said, look, you can only do this. We will bring you your food. Okay. You order something, we're going to bring it to you. Like, you don't even have to leave your room and all of that. I think that is probably part of this, is who is going to stop a football player from going to a party at their buddy's house. Let's be honest. If they go to a party at their buddy's house, say you have an athlete that is in Auburn, but is from Columbus, Georgia, which is right across the state line. It's maybe 10, 15 minutes away, and their buddy's having a party. Well, they're going to go over there. They may pick something up, bring it back, even though they're back in the quarantine or they're back in their dorms. They get it all. They get it everywhere. You have some athletes that live off campus. You have some athletes that don't live in the dorms. There was a point in time, and I remember, Bear Bryant used to talk about this, having the athletic dorms where everybody, all athletes lived here. Well, then people complained about it, and these athletes, the athletic dorms kind of went away, even though there are certain dorm areas on different campuses where a lot of these athletes go. If you ever watch an Auburn baseball game on the ESPN family of networks, SEC Network Plus, or wherever, over the right field wall, you'll see this humongous dormitory. That is where majority of the athletes live, because right to the left of it, maybe all of 200 feet, is the athletic facilities where they just walk right over and go to it. That's the reason why so many live there. But you can't make it 100%. because unlike the NBA and the NHL, these players are told, hey, stay in here, but they're also 18, 19, 20 years old. And if somebody swipes left or swipes right on their Tinder page and they're like, hey, why don't you come on down to the restaurant? They're going down to the restaurant. I mean, they're definitely going to do that. And then they cause an outbreak that takes place. That's what we've seen with the Cardinals. That's what we've seen with the Marlins is one player, two players, three players think that they're okay and they're going to go out and everybody's fine. And then next thing you know, boom, somebody wasn't smart and they got it and nobody knew. Look, and without being very specific about this, what my wife does is she works in a business where she works directly with a lot of people, and somebody came into her place of work and they had gotten COVID-19. They had known that they had gotten tested and tested positive for it, but they needed to go to work because they needed the money. She got exposed to it. Now, she never tested positive. I never tested positive. My son never tested positive. But at the same time, one person being careless is what can cause this whole thing to go downhill. And I agree with you. The moment they get on campus, they keep a ton of time. And look, this is the best scenario for a football player. Every class is online. You don't have to go to classes. You don't have to sit through anything. I loved online classes. Heck, I want to go back to school now and take online classes because they're so easy to do. You do them in your free time. You do them when you can, as long as you make sure you take the tests on the right days and you're golden. This is the perfect life for a college football player, a college basketball player, but they've got to be responsible with that. And at the same time, you're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. They're going to make dumb decisions.
Joe Hunk on the line, typically talking Auburn, Alabama, the SEC, and college football. It's still college football talk these days, but it's speculation about what kind of college football we're going to see this season, how much we're going to see, if we're going to see any at all. As it stands right now, again, the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12 look like they're ready to line up and play, along with some of the group of five minus Mountain West and MAC. I guess the other consideration here, Joe, that strikes some people is with all the medical expertise that's out there, and certainly each conference is relying on their own medical expertise, but I got to think that the information is similar. How are two conferences coming to one conclusion and the other three, at least to date, still holding out hope that they can make this happen?
Well, the SEC is very good about kicking the can down the road, and they've done this for years on various things, whether it was expansion. You remember when the huge expansion took place in the 2009s and 2010s, everybody kept saying, who's going to join the SEC? Who's going to join the SEC? When are you guys going to add? You've got all these teams are going to all these different ones, and they held back. And so, but then you eventually saw them make this decision. Adding Texas A&M at the time was like, okay, you get this Texas market, but at the same time, look at how much growth the SEC has had in the state of Texas. So they were very smart with this by holding off. Same thing takes place. Pac-12 had their own network. The Big Ten had their own network. And you're just going, you're the SEC. Why do you not have your own network? I personally love a lot of the content that's on the Pac-12 network. Problem is, it doesn't bring in money. The Big Ten network, on the other hand, has tremendous content on it, and it also does bring in a lot of money, like what the SEC was wanting. They waited to get more and more information before making the final plan and making the final decision. I truly believe that's what they're doing here as well, is they don't want to call anything off. They do not want to potentially end a college athlete season, career, take them off of campus where, again, like we talked about, where they're not as safe back in their hometowns, their home cities, their home streets, as they are being in this created bubble that they have whenever they do go to college football. And look, the word bubble in college football has always been there. We just have never called it that. But they do not want to take these athletes away from that. And then something happens where the athlete now either gets in trouble or they're no longer have the ability to play college football. And they're like, hey guys, come on back. We're totally kidding. We're starting in 3 weeks. We've got a football season to play. You guys are opened up against Michigan State. Let's go. Come on. We need to get ready. And these players have been sitting on the couch and not doing anything. And it hurts the product. It hurts their careers and all that. And that's just a small example. That's probably the example number 75 out of 100 you could possibly give. But they're trying to be smart with this by saying, look, let's stay the course. Let's continue to go about this the way that we normally would. And if at some point in time we get a definitive answer that we cannot ignore and we know this is it, this is what we are going to do. Look, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, every one of those universities want fans in the stands. We hear about Death Valley. You hear about Auburn at night. You hear about going into Bryant-Denny Stadium with 100,000 people screaming on top of you. Like, you hear about it. Do you not think that those universities still want to have that X factor in the college football season? Because if Auburn and LSU or Auburn and Alabama are playing, or Alabama and LSU are playing, what's going to be the X factor when Alabama goes to Baton Rouge this year and there's no fans in the stands? There is no more X factor of Death Valley at night and all that. They want to do this and they want to do it right. They're just going to continue to kick the can as far as they possibly can before they have to make that decision. And the SEC's always been very good at that. And I think that what's happening is you're seeing the SEC and the ACC kind of sit together and work together and just be like, look, continue to hold off. Look, the college football playoff, we all know that these three conferences are always going to be in the college football playoff. You've always has Oklahoma, you always have Clemson, you always have either an Alabama or LSU in this. So you know that these three conferences pretty much make up your college football playoff. What they're trying to do is make sure they don't make the wrong decision too early, because the Pac-12, they make a lot of wrong decisions, and they make them in a time where they could look back and go, yeah, we could have kind of held off for a little bit longer and look what's going on. And you see that with their universities time and time again. It doesn't have to do with, if you're on the left or you're on the right or whatever it is. It's just about being patient and having people that are in your administration or at the top of your conference that are very intelligent and know how to make good business decisions. Commissioner Sankey's been good at that, and his predecessors were very good at that.
Joe, don't you just love sports fans? Because when something like this happens, and obviously this is unprecedented, but anything like this, all they care about is getting people on the field to play. They just want to see their football. And so as soon as the Big Ten, especially, and I hate to exclude the Pac-12 because it's all big time football and it's what we want to see, but the Big Ten seemed to hit home to a lot of people more because of the quality of play and some of the brand names. But you get this groundswell of social media talk like, well, Ohio State, just go join the SEC and just be renegades and just rebels and just go play and make up a schedule and let them play. And what's really fascinating to me is what's happened at Nebraska, because while Ohio State, Ryan Day really campaigned to play, and even Gene Smith, their AD, right after the announcement, basically still kind of left it open as to, you could read between the lines that, man, we really want to play. And even though the Big Ten made this decision, we really want to play. But Nebraska went full bore, like renegade, loose cannons. We're going to rebel against the conference and we're just going to go play. And that just wasn't Scott Frost popping off. That went to the chancellor, the AD, the president. That went on for about a day and a half now. And then you hear today that probably cooler heads finally prevailed, and they probably had, a face-to-face with the Big Ten to say, this is the way things are, and you have an agreement with us. And if we say no, you can't just run off and do whatever you want, or we're going to fine you and do this, this, and this. And it was just kind of just funny to see Nebraska's reaction to all this and then what eventually happened.
Well, and also that goes back to what we were talking about. Nebraska hasn't been in the Big Ten for that long. And, there was a period of time, and we've seen it over the course of the last 2 years because of the College Football 150, the documentaries that have come out about the growth of college football from the time that Harvard and Yale were arguing over whose rules were the actual rules of college football, to the time that Alabama didn't even want to be invited to the Rose Bowl because the Rose Bowl didn't want to invite a team from the South, all the way to what it is now, where you had the national championship run of the SEC, you've had the dominance of Clemson, and you continue to see all of this. But Nebraska hasn't been married to the Big Ten. And if anything, Nebraska has been this one that was like so angry at their ex-girlfriend that they were currently dating. They were like, screw you, I'm going to this girl because she's way better. And then they've been with them for a little bit, and they're like, man, if you would just change, this would be so much better. And it absolutely would be so much better. And that's what's happened.
Joe Hunk on the line talking college football with us on a regular basis. Always enjoy the conversation, Joe. Hope everything's going well. Certainly, you're invited back anytime you want to talk college football. And as you mentioned, this is a fluid situation like none other, and we'll just track it day to day or hour to hour, or like you said, minute to minute.
Yeah, I mean, look, trust me, I would love to have Nebraska back in the Big 12. I honestly would. I would love to see these conferences work together to create these super football games that we've been looking for. But the other thing I don't want is I do not want us to have a weekend of college football where there's an athlete that gets hurt or has a heart condition that we could have stopped, all because we wanted to make sure that we have our Saturdays. Trust me. Everybody that is in that room right over there that's waiting on me to get done with this so that we can go eat dinner, they are dying for college football. The street that I'm living in, they live and breathe college football. Everybody in the city that I live in is all about college football. And if the college football season is canceled, trust me, they're going to go insane. But at the same time, I would hate for something bad to happen to some college football player because we were greedy for a sport just because we love it so much without making the right decision based on the information that we have. And who knows, by the spring, we could have a vaccine and the whole world could be back to the way that it normally was. And we can have a ton of information about this heart condition and everything could be back. And we could have 1 year in the spring where we're having college football and we're all fun. And every game is a snow game up in Ohio. And it's so much fun to watch this. And then we're back to normal. We could definitely have it, but right now we just don't have the information.
Joe, you go get yourself something good to eat, and we will catch you soon, man.
Barbecue.
Appreciate that.
Thanks, man.